Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do some disassembly and maintenance on this little guy right here. This is the CRKT Razel GT. So first off, things to highlight. This guy is slightly off-center, looks to be favoring the lock side. Also, this is an assisted pocket knife, which means when you get the blade out past a certain point, the whole thing springs on open. That means there is a spring in there that could go flying all the way off to that direction if I am not careful, so I have to be careful as I do so. That assist spring is going to be living underneath this scale here. And so I do need to be wary of that, and perhaps a little bit more wary of that than I've been in other situations. Moving on. So I'm going to start off using a Torx T6 screwdriver in the back here. And there was a little bit of thread locker there, but nothing too brutal. And then here we go. Remove this. Now I've got both of the screws here safely. I will have both of the screws safely out. Those look like, no, same size. All right, now I need to remove this guy here. I have the blade out. That should take a lot of the tension off of that spring. But nonetheless, what I'm going to do to, be careful here is just to hold on to the scale here. Hopefully, when I remove the, when I start to lift this up, it won't go shooting across the room, and neither will the rest of the knife. So basically, I'm lifting. I have my hand supporting this part downwards, so that ain't going. I've got a little bit here. Okay, and that was super anticlimactic because I had discharged the... I'm a little gun shy, in case you can't freaking tell, after the CRKT ritual thing. But what we see inside here is the assist spring. It is sitting in a bed of... appears to be some kind of a grease or another, which is fine. We see the blade, we see how everything works. And basically, the way that this assist spring will work is that you will, this goes in, engages with the blade, and then when the knife is closed, this spring kind of gets itself trapped up in this corner here, and will start to bend. And that bending is storing up force that when you start to deploy the knife, will push the blade down this way again and via the knife. That's how your assist works. What we see here is there is appears to be stainless steel, basically washer, between the bearing and this, what I assume to be aluminum piece. Don't quote me on that material, but it sure looks aluminish. So, I'm afraid I can't be terribly illuminating on that part of the review. Okay, anyways, back at the ranch. So, yeah, this is turning out to be, at least so far, a little easier than I had feared, which is a beautiful thing. All right, now I'm using some rubbing alcohol to get this guy off. And by the way, if you're curious about this or any of the other tools I use on the channel, check out nickshabazz.com/tools. I have recently redone the entire thing, so there's now a website associated with it, which has links to all of the various things I use with text descriptions, as well as a link to my latest video, which is going to be there. But all right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of wipe off the top of the grease here. I don't need to get rid of all of it. In fact, I don't want to get rid of all of it. But I do want to have it not just like everywhere. By the way, is the technical term, in case you were wondering. All right, let's go ahead and clean this guy off here as well. Construction-wise, this is pretty vanilla CRKT. The assist feels very similar to like the Speed Safe style assists, which would make sense with the inventor of Speed Safe working for CRKT, yeah. Anyways, although I don't know that they're using that term at the moment. Whatever. It is a whole thing. All right, and let's go on ahead and put that in there. Let's clean off the pivot while let's throw the pivot at myself as I get text messages. All right. Things are dissolving quick over here. And I don't mean grease. All right. So there is a D shape to this pivot. It's a flat area here. Need to make sure to align that with the flat area here, so that way it goes in. Go ahead and I'll put in the stop pin as well. Next step is going to be to use a little bit of lubrication. In this case, I'm going to use some 10-weight nano oil. I'm just going to put it right on the bearing race there, as well as putting a little bit of it onto the pivot itself. Next step is going to be to drop a bearing onto here. And I'm going to drop that bearing down, and I'm going to use this little watch spring bar tool here to rotate. Problem solved. There we go. Okay, drop that in there. Now I need to put another, actually I can just lubricate the detent ball here rather than lubricating the detent ball hole. And put a little bit of lubrication right here for the bearing to run on. Next up, I'm going to put this guy in place. Now, one thing you're going to notice, and this is always something to pay attention to, is this washer has a very clear wear right here and very little wear right over here, which means that you want to make sure that you put the area that's already worn in by the balls, so to speak, on the balls. You want to keep things on the ball here. Okay. Next up, I'm going to want to drop this guy into position here. So I'll leave the assist in place for the moment. The real question is going to be, okay, so where does the assist go in? I'm assuming it's going into this little hole right here. But I'm not really going to know until I've reassembled it, because it would seem a little weird for it to go in this intermediate hole here, but we will see. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is make that assumption. Oh, Sue, I'm still zoomed in. Sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption that it's going into this hole here rather than the other one. It's a closer fit in size, etc. But, yeah. Then what I'm going to do is we're going to test that assumption by reinstalling the pivot here. I'm going to go ahead and use, under an abundance of optimism, that I am correct here, I'm going to go ahead and use this screw. And by the way, for what it's worth, it's always worth considering, am I doing this wrong as you are disassembling or reassembling a pocket knife? Okay, that was cool. I just closed the knife and the scale popped away because you can see the force that this spring is wanting to exert on the scale. But now if I pinch this shut, actually that's not working so well. But either way, what I have confirmed is that I do have the scale in the proper positioning, which is nice. Which is very nice. All right, so I'm just going to tighten that down to a moderate level here. If I start to close the blade again, it will start to, it'll start to move the scale around. So that's good. Let's go on ahead and reinstall the back screws that will keep the scale from rotating on me. One thing that's worth noting is that this rear back spacer appears to be obligatory and that you do need something providing space back here, but there's no reason why you couldn't just grind that off, right? Take a hacksaw to it, put it in a vise, and go to town, which I think is going to be a desirable thing for a number of people. I know that's a thing John Graham likes to do. It's not necessarily a thing I like for John Graham to do, but whatever. That's his own artistic style. Right, okay. Now, finally, let's get the pivot in. Oh, actually, let's double-check to make sure. Yeah, that deploys beautifully. Yeah, so there is that. Let's tighten the pivot down a little bit, make sure we have no blade play. No play at all. The blade is slightly favoring, it could just be an asymmetrical grind, but it's slightly favoring the the lock side as it was at the start of the video, so I'm not super freaking out, but I wonder if I loosen the pivot some. Yeah, that brings it closer to center. Because remember, when you've got the pivot too tight, it's going to be towards the lock side, and when you get the pivot too loose, it's going to be towards the show side. There is no play here still. And we are pretty roughly centered. Again, allowing for the fact that the grind on this is not particularly symmetrical from side to side at the top there. But yeah, we look pretty close to centered. We have no play. We are done. Hey, hallelujah. That was easier than I'd hoped. So, well, no, I'm sorry. That was easier than I expected. That was as easy as I'd hoped. Let me be very clear about that. I'm not a disassembly masochist. But okay, let's go on ahead and wrap up the video. Hope this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.